This story's called A Twisted Tale by Accomplished Oil 611 from the HFY subreddit. Monsters aren't real? You sure about that? Tara teased. She liked teasing her brother and his friends. She enjoyed sharply unlatching a few of those tiny safety pins her mother had stuck in their brains to keep the insanity from flowing everywhere. Today's adventure had taken them into uncharted territory. The journey began at Tom Duncan's house. His father was a deputy and had been assigned to the missing Leo brothers case. The Leos were the kind of brothers that no one really wanted to find. However, their mother had reported them missing, and it was a small town, so the sheriff's department had to at least appear to look. According to Duncan, the brothers had gone to spend their paychecks at the local bar and struck up a conversation with old man Hopper. Hopper was a farmer whose land sat adjacent to the Hill place. Now, everyone knew the Hills, which is to say they knew of the Hills. It's not just that their family home predated the town. They were, in fact, a very weird bunch. It wasn't that they kept to themselves. They were actually seen all over town, the women anyway. What was weird was that sometimes they were seen in 2 or 3 places at once. You could meet one, have a good conversation, the next time they have no apparent recollection of ever having met. They were also sticklers for receipts, and the deal had to be made in writing. My word is my bond just didn't fly, which is fairly at odds with the town's culture. As such, people tolerated them, but everyone kept their distance. Now, it was uncommon knowledge that brothers had left Hopper that night, but Tara knew because Tom knew because Deputy Duncan sometimes talks in his sleep. Now, Tara's gang was on the hunt to solve the case of the missing men. They had walked, Tom had happily announcing his theories that the Hills were some kind of vampire cannibal chefs that were currently enjoying some rare Leo steaks with wild mushrooms and a nice bordelaise sauce. This devolved into the many potential monsters that likely lived in the thickly wooded land surrounding the Hills estate. Quickie followed up with reassurances that, in fact, monsters aren't real, and was finally interrupted by Tara's comment regarding the reality of monsters just as they reached the high wooden fence surrounding the Hills property. The town had long whispered that the fence completely surrounded the 100 acres of land owned by the Hills, creating a fortress. However, whenever it was mentioned in public, the folks that bordered the Hills contended that good fences make good neighbors. As they reached the fence, Tara turned the gang towards Hopper's place, assuming that if the kids followed the fence, they'd surely find the hole that would take them into the Forbidden Lands. Everyone seemed to think it was a good idea, but as they walked and the sky grew dark, their crew began to hear things. It started simple enough. The waning sun brought out the crickets, which began to sing. They got louder and louder, and then night fell, and they completely stopped. Instead, their absence was replaced with sounds of the fence itself. It appeared to be creaking and groaning as they walked past it. From the other side, they could hear an occasional scratching, which might have been a tree branch, except there was no wind. It wasn't long before the gang of 12 turned into a gang of 4 as nerves shattered 2 by 2. The kids retreated back to safety. The debate was now loudly in favor of monsters being real. The remaining 4 included Tara, her brother, Tom Duncan, and Shep, who had moved in from the city and was still trying to prove himself. Tom was busy trying to convince Shep that he'd be the first to die because no one liked outsiders, and particularly not vampire cannibals. However, it was Tara's brother who broke from fear. His imagination would incur casualties, and soon a penultimate consensus was reached to retreat to safer grounds. In the end, it was only Tara who wanted to persist, and all agreed that she was old enough to go it alone. Oddly enough, going it alone was Tara's preferred state. The gang was necessary to a point. They provided the source of excitement and mystery. However, when a true puzzle needed solving, she really only ever counted on herself. Alone, she didn't need to act. Her pretend bravado, or whatever it was that intrigued so many followers, washed away. Alone, she was at peace to solve the mystery. She knew there was a hole in this fence. She knew where to find it. And when she did, she expected to find the Leo brothers and whatever ward would come with it. As the boys blended into the shadows of the night and their voices trailed off, she sighed in relief that she was finally alone. The thing was, she really didn't feel alone. As she intently watched the fence, odd things began to happen. It wasn't just scraping from whatever was behind it. It felt more like a groan of old wood being bent and shaped. Following the fence, Tara began to feel as though she was in a trance. As the fence grew out of the darkness and almost seemed to bend out in spots, it took on a wavy pattern. She knew it was all in her head, but as she looked up, the fence appeared to curve. She watched it in transfixed fascination as she plowed forward. The fence took on a new shape, bending over her. Its pikes appeared like sharp teeth from a beast's giant maw. She barely noticed that the darkness was giving way to some ethereal light in front of her. Yet as her gaze brought her eyes forward again, she saw the truth. This was no hallucination. In front of her, the fence pulsed. Its static ripples were now flowing rhythmically, like blood from a heart. The fence had curled back on itself, revealing what she'd hoped to find and yet never have expected. The fence before her was twisted around itself into a throat full of pulsating, turning teeth. The spikes looked too sharp for wooden pikes. Instead, they appeared to be a snacking black teeth before a white light beyond. Tara was frightened, yet for some reason she felt like she belonged here. She was meant to cross this threshold. It was as much of an invitation as a warning. There it was. It was otherworldly and fourth dimensional, but it was also the hole in the fence that she'd set out for. So, humming to herself, she climbed over the warped wrapping fence and continued forward, first walking, then crawling. The spikes gave way to smooth surface as she approached the light. Her knees didn't feel so much as a sliver as she pushed forward. The wood was no longer that of a demon, or even an old weathered fence, but was polished and soft. Crawling out the other side, Tara didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't what she found. Tara stepped out of the darkness and into daylight. What she found was simple. It was just a path. Turning back, she found the hole to be gone. Even the fence itself was different. Instead of wood, what towered over her appeared to be made of stone. All appearances gave the feel of a sheer cliff face. What lay beyond it, she did not know. Around her were thick woods. There seemed to be no choice. Take the path. As she ventured through the woods, she heard all sorts of sounds. At first, it was almost like there was an entire city just out of sight. Then the noises became weird. The sounds of giant things creeping about gave her the willies, and she hurried on. Eventually, after walking far longer than she would have liked, the path gave way to a large clearing. As she looked out upon it, she saw a shape. It was that of a man, just sitting there like a statue. The man didn't seem to notice her as she approached. Retaining all his unnaturally stiff demeanor, she began to wonder if he was a statue. Then she reached out and he almost popped to life. "Mrs. Hill?" he said, appearing confused. "Sir, my name is Tara." "Interesting. Miss Tara, then." The man continued. "Welcome back. It's been an age. You look younger." The way he said it gave Tara the confidence to know she was in the right place. The Hills have always been confused about meeting people. Tara had almost gotten used to the oddity. She was prepared to correct him when he continued. "Are you ready for your third wish?" "My third wish?" Tara said, flabbergasted. "Sir, I don't believe we've ever met. My name is Tara Underwood, and I came here to look for the Leo brothers. I don't suppose you've seen them." The man thought what seemed to Tara to be a very long time, opening his mouth to say something and then retracting again. Finally, she spoke up. "It's just, what is this place? Where am I? Who are you?" The man looked at Tara as if not hearing her. "You're Tara Underwood?" he asked. "I am," she replied. "And you are?" The man seemed distant for a moment. He then spoke. "I am Sarum Karathajan, and Miss Tara Underwood Hill. It appears that you have been rather more than an age. You appear to have been lost to time. A curious thing, time. It seems you have found your way back." Tara thought he'd been confused, but now she wasn't sure if it was him or perhaps her. The man was clearly new to her, yet something pulled in the back recesses of her mind. Something like deja vu. Had she seen this man before? "I'm sorry," she said in a tone that screams for more details. "I am Sarah." "No," screamed Tara. How do we know each other?" "I'm your djinn," said the man in a matter-of-fact tone. "You do not know this?" "Perhaps you could remind me," replied Tara, now a bit on edge. The djinn smiled, but the smile did not elicit comfort. "I'm a creature of magic," he said. "My power has no rival, and thus the universe itself has forced my containment, binding me to itself and forcing my will to its laws. Still, I ventured far and saw much. I fell in love, and when my love died, I tried to kill myself. The universe wouldn't allow it. So instead, I brought her back, but she was different. When I tried to make her fall in love with me, the universe intervened. For breaking its laws, the universe imprisoned me, petrified me, and left me here to my fate." He paused, but only for just a moment, as if to mourn a thing which had died in himself. It seemed he was holding his breath. But then he continued. "You freed me, but my freedom came with a cost. The universe required I grant you 3 wishes, 3 sacrifices for 3 transgressions. Yet, you wanted nothing but adventure. A wish I cannot grant, as adventure seeks unknown desires. I offered you fortune and fame, but you cared for none of it. So, I became a companion to your quest. It was years before you asked for a wish. You had met a man and fell in love. You took his name, and you wanted nothing more than his happiness. So you wished for it, and with impetuousness, I granted it. Yet, his heart was darker than you knew, and his happiness was your torment. Years passed before he discarded you. You blamed me, but you feared and hated him. So to regain your freedom, you made a second wish. You wished to escape completely. You wanted the ability to leave at any time. With that, he paused again, and Tara waited patiently. So, I gave you this." As he said it, he gestured around him. "You created this?" asked Tara. "It is a gateway. Pass can lead anywhere, anytime." "Wait," said Tara. "I thought you couldn't kill anyone, so what's with the gate?" "The gate?" laughed the djinn. "Smoke and mirrors, a parlor trick to ward off the weak. Did it scare you, small child?" He smirked as he spoke. The gateway is just a series of paths, and anyone may use them. Some paths provide adventures, but for others, he shrugged and his eyes looked away. I thought I'd lost you. But, said Tara, unsure of herself, none of those things happened to me. The Jinn smiled. When you left the man, you had but one name, a beautiful Gaelic name, and the only one you trusted, you went by that. As you traveled, you found that leaving the future behind was easy. You loved the past as a place of happiness, so you changed the name just a little, enough to mask your past, but to go back and visit your youth. Tara took a step back as the pieces came together in her mind. Where did I find you? She asked. The Jinn looked at her. It was as though he saw into her soul. You found me here. Today. Just now. At this moment. He paused and smiled. You, my dear girl, are my freedom, my muse, and my... He stopped. I was your love? She asked. You're my fate, he replied. So how about that third wish? Tara thought for a moment. I wish to never find the Leo brothers. A good choice, replied the genie, smiling brightly. You've been listening. And with that, he was gone. That story was called A Twisted Tale by Accomplished Oil 611 on the HFY subreddit. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.